The rent bill arrived. This time, the brown paper envelope with the unmistakable red stamp of an eviction notice. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as the cold morning sun of Chicago reflected on her trembling hand. She could no longer ignore it. Over the last 2 years, the flower shop she inherited from her mother, a legacy of passion and fragrance, had withered like an unwatered rose. Her savings, the emergency fund, her son's college money, it all evaporated. At 55, she found herself on a precipice, a moment of shock and despair that, unfortunately, echoes the experience of many Americans. Every 15 minutes, someone aged 50 or older in the U.S. declares bankruptcy, a number that has grown exponentially, driven by medical debt, job loss, and a lack of financial planning. Sarah, the American dream had turned into a silent nightmare, and the eviction notice was her wake-up call. Financial crisis doesn't arrive suddenly. It settles in slowly, like a fog that obscures the landscape. In Sarah's case, the fog began with the emergence of a large chain of florists just a few blocks from her shop. Customer traffic dwindled, sales fell, and what was once a thriving business became a financial drain. Initially, Sarah convinced herself it was just a slow period, a market fluctuation. She cut superfluous expenses, renegotiated contracts with suppliers, but continued to pour her personal savings into the business in a desperate attempt to save it, hoping the situation would reverse. It was a vicious cycle where every cent invested was a lost bet. The situation worsened with an unexpected bout of pneumonia. The days of hospitalization and treatment resulted in a colossal medical debt that her health insurance did not fully cover. With each new bill, her anguish grew. She was too ashamed to ask for help from friends or family, and the idea of declaring bankruptcy was unthinkable. Slowly, she isolated herself. She stopped answering calls from unknown numbers and ignored letters from debt collectors. This attitude, however, only made things worse, allowing interest to accumulate and the debt to become an uncontrollable snowball. The eviction notice was the final straw, the moment when the cruel and undeniable reality hit her full force. She felt paralyzed. The home she lived in, full of family memories, was about to be taken from her. Fear was a constant companion. She wondered how she could start over at 55, an age when many Americans are thinking about retirement. Sarah's story, full of failures and despair, is a reminder of how fragile financial security can be when there isn't a solid plan and when you avoid facing problems head-on. Denial, pride, and fear are the 3 greatest enemies of those on the brink of bankruptcy. The first step to recovery is not a financial plan, but the recognition that a crisis exists. Sarah's case, although personal, is a reflection of the financial landscape for many Americans. Her journey toward bankruptcy was not caused by a single event, but by a perfect storm of factors that, together, became insurmountable. The flower shop, the business that was her livelihood and her family's, was the first domino to fall. Increased competition from large corporations, combined with the shift in consumer behavior toward e-commerce, eroded her customer base. Sarah's inability to adapt, to create an online presence, or to innovate her products was a crucial mistake. Clinging to the tradition and business model of her mother, she failed to see that the world had changed. According to the Journal of the American Medical Association, approximately 66.5% of all personal bankruptcies in the U.S. are caused, in whole or in part, by medical expenses. This statistic takes on a face and a name in Sarah's drama. The pneumonia, an unexpected health condition, generated a mountain of medical debt not fully covered by her insurance. She believed that having health insurance was enough, but didn't pay attention to the details of the coverage, such as deductibles, copays, and what exactly was included. The result was a bitter surprise, turning a health need into a financial disaster. The lack of a robust emergency fund was another crucial factor. Personal finance experts recommend having at least 3 to 6 months of basic expenses saved for unforeseen circumstances. Sarah did not have this. Each month, she withdrew money from her savings to cover the shop's bills. And by the time the health crisis hit, her financial reserve was virtually zero. This absence of a safety net turned a health situation into a survival crisis. She had no source of money to pay for the treatment and had to resort to high-interest loans, a mistake many Americans make. The lack of financial education manifested in several ways in Sarah's life. She didn't know how to create a budget, didn't understand loan interest, and had no retirement plan. Instead of facing the problem head-on, she ignored it, which only allowed debts to accumulate and become unsustainable. The mindset of everything will be fine without concrete action is a trap that many middle-aged people fall into, as they are accustomed to a certain lifestyle and have difficulty adapting. Sociologist Richard P. Copley, in his study on middle-aged bankruptcies, points out that the main cause, in 87% of cases, is job loss or the decline of one's own business. Sarah fits this statistic perfectly. The failure of her flower shop, the business that supported her for years, was the beginning of her fall. The combination of a changing economy, unexpected medical expenses, and the lack of a solid financial knowledge base turned what could have been a transition into a total collapse. Sarah's case, and the data surrounding it, serve as a warning for people not to wait for a crisis to arrive to start educating themselves financially. The shock of the eviction notice was the spark that ignited the need for change in Sarah. Paralyzed for a moment, she knew she had to act but didn't know where to start. In her desperate search for help, she found the Helping Hand Financial Foundation, a nonprofit organization that offers free financial counseling to people in crisis in the Chicago area. It was a strangely comforting name amidst her personal chaos. The counselor, a woman named Eleanor, listened to her story without judgment and, with a pen in hand, helped her take the first step, confronting reality. Together, they made a detailed inventory of all of Sarah's debts. High-interest credit cards, student loans she had co-signed for her son, the back rent, and overdue medical bills. The list seemed endless, and the total amount was breathtaking. For many, this moment would be discouraging. But for Sarah, it was a moment of clarity. For the first time, she saw the enemy concretely, not as an overwhelming shadow. The strategy Eleanor proposed was the debt avalanche. Instead of paying off the smallest debt first, the debt snowball method. The avalanche focuses on paying off the debts with the highest interest rates first, which saves more money in the long run. Eleanor explained that this technique is scientifically proven to accelerate financial recovery, as it reduces the total amount of interest paid. The plan was implemented immediately. The first priority was the rent debt. Sarah and Eleanor negotiated with the landlord, explaining the situation and proposing a partial payment plan which gave them a few extra weeks. During this period, Sarah made a difficult but necessary decision to permanently close the flower shop. Her emotional attachment to her mother's legacy was overcome by the need to survive. She took inventory of all the remaining stock, gardening tools, and shelves, and decided to sell them. At a local craft fair, she set up a small stall and, with the help of supportive neighbors, sold all her items, from ceramic pots to rare seeds. The money raised was enough to cover the back rent, preventing eviction. The initial success, however small, injected a dose of hope into Sarah. For the first time in years, she felt she was in control. With Eleanor's help, she began to negotiate with creditors. Instead of ignoring calls, she answered them. She explained her situation and, based on her new payment plan, proposed agreements. Most creditors were willing to negotiate, as it was better to receive something than nothing. This debt negotiation process is a powerful tool, but it requires courage and a clear strategy. Sarah learned to communicate assertively, to present her plan, and not to be intimidated by threats. She was no longer a passive victim. She was a fighter, Sarah's recovery journey is an example that, with the right guidance and a willingness to act, it is possible to get out of a financial hole, one step at a time. Sarah's recovery was not just about negotiating debts and selling assets. The real transformation happened in her mindset. The biggest mistake she made was not the failure of the flower shop, but her financial inertia and the belief that problems would solve themselves. For years, she operated her mother's business with the same mindset, without worrying about market changes or long-term planning. The counselor Eleanor introduced her to a new way of thinking, financial education. Sarah's first lesson was learning how to create a budget. Eleanor encouraged her to use a free personal finance app where she could track every cent that came in and went out. At first, it was a shock to see where her money was actually going. Spending on TV subscriptions she barely used, daily small snacks, and other seemingly insignificant expenses added up to a surprising amount at the end of the month. This awareness of her spending habits was the first step to control. She learned to categorize her expenses, to separate what was essential from what was superfluous, and to create a limit for each category. Next came reading. Eleanor recommended books like The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey, A Practical Guide to Getting Out of Debt, and Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, which made her rethink the relationship between work and money. She learned about compound interest, the difference between assets and liabilities, and the importance of investing for the future, not just for the present. Gradually, financial education stopped being a daunting task and became a passion. She attended free online workshops, participated in webinars, and joined a financial support group, where people with similar stories shared experiences and tips. Sarah's story is a powerful example of how financial education can be the light at the end of the tunnel. According to a survey by the National Financial Educators Council, people who participated in financial education programs are 28% more likely to save for retirement and 45% more likely to maintain an emergency fund. Knowledge empowered Sarah, showing that she was in control and not the other way around. She stopped being a victim of circumstances and became the architect of her own financial future. She learned that financial education is not just about numbers, but about awareness, choices, and control. With the flower shop closed and her financial education underway, Sarah knew she needed a new source of income. The money she saved with her new budget and debt payment plan was not enough to support herself and start building a future. Inspired by her passion for gardening and the success of selling her stock, she decided to use her knowledge and talent for a new venture. She started offering gardening and landscaping consulting services to neighbors and friends. Word of mouth spread quickly. People trusted her taste and experience, and she soon had a small but loyal clientele. The new career not only gave her a sense of purpose, but also a flexibility she didn't have at the shop, allowing her to manage her time and finances more efficiently. She started charging by the hour, creating a simple and realistic business plan. In parallel, she used the knowledge she gained to start investing. The idea of investing seemed scary at first, but the counselor Eleanor guided her. She learned about exchange-traded funds, ETFs, a simple way to diversify and invest in many companies at once, and opened an investment account with a small monthly amount. The goal was not to become a millionaire overnight, but rather to make her money work for her, a principle she had learned from the books. She also learned the importance of consistency, investing a fixed amount every month regardless of market fluctuations, a technique known as dollar cost averaging. Financial education made her explore new paths. Sarah enrolled in a cooking class for seniors, where she discovered a new passion and talent: healthy cooking with a focus on organic products. What started as a hobby soon turned into a business idea. She began making and selling healthy meals and cakes, using products from her own home garden. This new source of income not only complemented her gardening work, but also gave her a new community and a sense of purpose. Sarah's story is an example that, even in the midst of a crisis, it is possible to reinvent yourself. The key to her success was the combination of education, action, and creativity. She didn't limit herself to a single job or a single idea. She explored her talents and passions and turned them into financial opportunities. The result was not just a recovery, but the building of a richer and more satisfying life. Sarah's journey was not a fairy tale, but her persistence and new knowledge led her to a place of peace and security. She not only avoided bankruptcy, but also built a new career and a more secure financial future. The flower shop that haunted her became a distant memory, surpassed by her new passion for gardening and cooking. The most important lesson she learned was that financial education is not just about numbers, but about awareness, choices, and control. She realized that financial security is not a destination, but a continuous process of learning and adaptation. With her debts under control and a stable income, Sarah began to focus on her retirement plan. At 55, she knew she was late, but she also knew it was better to start late than never. With Eleanor's help, she opened an individual retirement account, IRA, and began contributing regularly. Although the amount was small at first, the power of compound interest encouraged her. She also created an emergency fund with 6 months of basic expenses. A lesson that came from her painful experience with pneumonia. This safety net was, for her, more valuable than any flower. Sarah's change in mindset was reflected in all areas of her life. She now taught her grandchildren the importance of saving and invested a small part of her earnings in a college investment account for them, something she was not able to do for her own son. What was once a source of shame was now a story of overcoming and inspiration. She became a passionate advocate for financial education for the middle-aged, speaking openly about her experience and encouraging others to seek help. Sarah's story is a powerful reminder that it is never too late to start over. The crisis that brought her to the precipice was, in fact, the driving force that made her change her life for the better. The loss of her mother's business was painful, but her reinvention as a landscaper and cook, and the knowledge she acquired, freed her to build a future that was truly her own. Sarah's financial life was not perfect, but it was sustainable, conscious, and, above all, secure. Sarah's journey didn't end with financial stability. On the contrary, the security she gained propelled her to connect with her community in a way she had never done before. She transformed her story of failure into a testimony of resilience. Instead of hiding the past, she used it to help others. She started giving free talks at community centers and churches, sharing her experience with bankruptcy and the strategies that pulled her out of the hole. Her audience was, for the most part, middle-aged people who, like her, felt lost and ashamed of their financial difficulties. Sarah's story was living proof that it was possible to get back on your feet. She talked about the importance of facing debts head-on, seeking professional advice, and, above all, educating oneself financially. She taught them how to create a budget, how to negotiate with creditors, and how to find new sources of income. What started as therapy for her became an invaluable service to the community. She became a reference figure, the finance lady of Chicago, as they affectionately called her. With the success of her talks, she created a small ebook called Starting Over at 50, a practical guide, where she detailed her journey and offered practical tools and exercises. The ebook was sold at a symbolic price, and all profits were donated to the Helping Hand Financial Foundation, the organization that helped her in the beginning. Her passion for helping others was as great as her passion for gardening, and her new life's purpose was to ensure that no one else her age had to go through the same despair she felt. Sarah's true legacy was not her mother's flower shop, but her story of overcoming and the community she built around the theme of financial education. She demonstrated that a financial crisis can be the catalyst for a more fulfilling and purposeful life. At 60, Sarah felt more alive and secure than ever, with a new career, a solid financial future, and the satisfaction of leaving a positive mark on the world. Her story became a beacon of hope, a reminder that with the right attitude, disaster can be the prelude to a glorious new beginning.